Good morning. We're going to pick up where we left off with perspectives of human nature. And we've just come from talking about behaviorists who focused on behavior alone and the consequences that we can provide following that behavior to either increase the likelihood it happens again or decrease the likelihood it happens again. This was good as far as it went, and we still use behaviorist principles in modern day when we train our animals, when we raise our children, when we give good grades for success on tests. Those are behavioral principles. I tell you there's going to be a test, you study, you make a good grade. That consequence of the good grade makes it more likely that in the future you'll study when you hear that there's a test, because that behavior of studying was rewarded by the good grade. However, there was a need in human beings to recognize their own free will, to explain why people will do things that are not in their best interest and that even potentially punish them, yet they'll continue to do those things. And so we come to the humanists. Humanism was a basic philosophy that developed over in Europe and came to America that really was a rejection of religious values and religious ideals, pointing man to himself, pointing man to his own ability to achieve the highest of his potential without a higher power, without anybody else. And when humanism took hold in psychology, there were three basic tenets that the humanistic psychologists put forward. Number one is that humans are fundamentally good. This was in direct challenge to Freud's contention that human beings are basically trash. He was once quoted famously in a letter to a colleague. Said, "I don't care who you put before me. Human beings are basically trash." And Freud was looking at the baser desires and the baser pursuits of human nature. The humanists said, no, humans are fundamentally good, that they actively seek to make choices using their free will, that they're not guided primarily by the consequences, but that we're rewarded internally by using free will, and that we're capable of self-control. The contention being that there's not some hidden force within us, in our unconscious mind, that's controlling our behavior and our choices and our attitudes, that we make our own personal choices and are able to self-control. And my guess is this is how you were raised, believing that that you're aware of what you need to be aware of, and that based on what you're aware of, you make your own decisions. You can read that quote from Carl Rogers, who was the therapy branch of humanism. The fact is, people are good, give people affection and security, and they'll give affection and be secure in their feelings and their behavior. Well, it's a beautiful sentiment, but we know that that's not always true. There are plenty of evil men and women around who were given affection and security, but they don't return that favor. We also know that there are plenty of evil people around who did not get affection and security, and so we try to trace the roots of evil behavior and look at the lacking of some people. The humanists said, if you're treated right when you're a kid, then you're going to turn into a reasonably good adult. That's humanism. Let's go to existentialism. It's one of my favorite perspectives, the existential perspective. Existential refers to questions of life, the bigger questions of existence. The existentialists also put forth three tenets. Human beings must make choices using free will, that relying on others can lead us quite astray. That human beings are motivated primarily by a search for meaning in life. Who am I? Why am I here? And what am I supposed to be doing? And that human beings are both good and evil. And I think this probably fits at least how I feel and how you feel. I could be I'm capable of great good, but I'm also capable of dark evil, and thus must choose using free will to create a meaning for myself that's good so that I can continue to pursue that meaning. I think Jean-Paul Sartre, in Being and Nothingness, captured the existential perspective interestingly for us in this quote: "If a man is not definable, it is because to begin with he is nothing. He will not be anything until later, and then he will be what he makes of himself. The man builds himself." Interesting to consider infants as nothing because they haven't done anything yet, because they haven't demonstrated their good or evil potential. That's an existential perspective, that we are defined by our works, not defined by our existence. I think many people feel this way. Certainly once you have your career, you will very likely be tempted to define yourself based on what you accomplish within your careers. Certainly a struggle that I have. During the first 2 semesters, fall and spring, I feel pretty valuable in my own self because I'm doing something. I'm working hard and hopefully being productive. During the summer, when I'm not working, not teaching every day, certainly not face-to-face, there's a question that rises. What am I worth? What am I accomplishing? I think that's well and good, and we should focus on our accomplishments. But I think also that fundamentally, the existentialists lead to more despair than others, because my worth as a human being, does it come from what I do, what I accomplish, or does it come from the fact that I'm a human being, that I'm endowed with identity, and therefore infinitely valuable? Existentialists identified problems in living as existential crises, crises in our own personal existence, and the first being isolation, feeling all alone. I can have many friends, but not sharing with my friends my deeper problems or questions of existence can often give me the sensation and perception of being isolated. Second possible existential crisis is, who am I? Questioning my purpose, questioning meaning in life. If life has no meaning and I have no purpose, then what am I doing here? The third is death anxiety, anxiety over my own mortality. Very often adolescents put this off and distract themselves by imagining that they have plenty of time, that death only happens to old people. By the time you get to be 40 and 50, that's where the midlife crisis comes in. The midlife crisis is actually a death crisis. Wow, I'm closer to death than I've ever been. It's coming. I can see the evidence that it's coming in my wrinkles and bald head or whatever. And I have to start dealing with that reality. Has my life had meaning? And then the fourth is interesting, too much responsibility. This is a difficult one to wrap one's head around, because we know that with great power comes great responsibility. There are some people who choose lower positions in life, less freedom. They give up their freedom because to be free means I have to make my own choices using free will, and I might make the wrong choice. And when people are relying on me, I have responsibility for them and myself. That could be too much for some people, and so we see some people in their 40s and 50s reacting to too much responsibility by shirking it, by getting rid of it. I'm not going to be married anymore. I'm not going to be a father or a mother to my children anymore, because they have plenty of reasons that they put forward, but underneath it all, they crumbled under the responsibility. How does one deal with an existential crisis? I believe that we can find pretty much all of what we do to deal with crises here in this. I'm sorry. My phone. The 4 solutions: isolation, anchoring, distracting, and sublimating. The first solution is isolation, just to say, doesn't matter anyway. To adopt a nihilistic or fatalistic, not nihilistic, but fatalistic attitude towards the world. What's going to happen is going to happen. I don't have any control over it. I'm not going to get all upset about things. So in isolation, I deny thoughts and feelings and simply live my life. It's isolating my affect, isolating my feelings about certain situations. The second is anchoring. Most of us do this. We identify meaning in life and we anchor to that, and that's what guides us through. My wife is a good example of anchoring. If you ask her what her purpose in life is, she very quickly and simply says, my purpose is to be the best wife and mother that I can possibly be. And that's her anchor. And she allows that to guide her behavior, to guide her principles. Others will anchor to, my goal is to be the best worker I could possibly be, or the best author, or we anchor to our religious beliefs. My goal is to serve God. And when I anchor into that, it locks me in, and now I have my purpose. Now I have my meaning in life. Distraction. I certainly do a lot of this. Play video games. Some people distract with addictions, drugs, alcohol, pornography, anything to get my mind off of the deeper questions of life and just to live in the moment and stimulate my mind so that it's distracted. And then sublimation perhaps would be the more the more beneficial aspect or solution. Sublimation is a term for a defense mechanism of taking evil and turning it for good, taking bad thoughts and turning them into motivation to do right, attempting to undo negative thoughts and negative behavior. I sublimate them into goodness. Which means I'm not isolating. I'm dealing with it. I'm recognizing that there's evil within me and evil within the world, but I'm choosing not to act on it. I'm choosing to act in direct opposition to that evil. And we'll stop there, and I'll pick up in a bit.